So I feel like today, especially, I need to call in some laughter, and I love irony. So I'm going to tell you the story about how the bank was robbed while I was setting up a bank account for the local time bank. So, if you're not familiar with time banking, it is a platform where community members can trade services with each other. So, it is a service to service trade. Your hour of time is worth the same as somebody else's hour of time. And instead of trading money for both of those services, you would just trade hours, and it is on a platform that they're traded. And in order to access this platform, which was already set up, we needed a bank account. And so that was one of the things that I was in charge of doing, was going up and setting up this bank account for our time bank. So this is where it starts to get good. So I'm in line at the bank, and this dude like knocks into me, and he like hits me in the shoulder and kind of like continues to act erratically in the bank. And he turns around, and I see that he has like something over his face, like smushing his face down. And I don't know why, but like in my brain, I was like, oh, this burn victim is acting weird. And and for some reason that's where my brain went. But in Ipsy, like I see all sorts of weird shit all the time. Growing up here, it's been like all the time I see weird stuff, so it did not register. So then he like starts knocking brochures off the counter, and he like throws something at the teller, and the teller is like all afraid. And then he says, "I'm robbing the bank." And only then did it register to me that he was actually robbing the bank. And I look around, and everyone else is like afraid. They are really afraid. And I still was like, "Oh, the bank is getting robbed now." And so like it feels like a long time, right? Because it's like a robbery, but it really was like very quick. He was like in and out, and we all looked around, and he was gone. And so like then like everyone's freaking out, like, what's going on? And they're like, okay, we called the cops. And I was like, cops? I don't want nothing to do with that, right? And so I asked the guy, I was like, do I have to stay here? He was like, no. I was like, okay, I'm gonna leave. And he was like, okay. I don't want nothing to do with cops, because in order for me to get into a place where I can enter an institution, I have to get really fucking high. And I was really high. I did not want that. So I hopped in my car and I fucking left. And I was done with it. I was like, okay, that it happened, whatever. Then a couple weeks later, I had to go back to the bank because I still had to set up the bank account, right? Like I didn't finish. Like we were in the middle of setting it up, and this guy comes in, and so I just like took my paperwork and left. And so I came back to the bank, and I like get in front of the teller, right? And she's like, "Oh, it's you." And I was like, "What do you mean it's me?" She was like, "You were here when the bank was robbed." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I remember." And so she goes on this like rant about how traumatic it was and how she had to take off 2 weeks of work, and this is only her like first day back, and she got like counseling services from the bank, and like there was this whole like everybody was so traumatized by it, right? And she was like, "But I recognize you from the video." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She said, you were so calm in the video." And I was like, "Oh, what, like, I don't know what you mean." She was like, "You had like absolutely no reaction. Everyone else was reacting and was afraid, and you were just calm and centered." And like I was like, "Oh yeah, But in my head, I was like, "Yes, I was calm and centered because I didn't know the bank was being robbed until it was like done." So yeah, of course I was calm and centered because I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And as soon as I knew what was going on, I just left. And that was it. But everyone else like had such a hard time with it. I just think that the irony is just so interesting and funny. I just can't get over how the time bank was the reason I was in the bank when it was robbed. Money is such a weird thing, you guys. It makes us do so many weird things. And I was trying to detach from it, and the universe was like, mm-mm.